Without further ado, this brings us to the first in our agenda, the first panel discussion, Walking the Talk, Bursa and Early Adopters Aspiration in Catalyzing Green Economy. We are honored to have with us today a diverse group of panelists from various backgrounds. Our first session panelists will be discussing the ways in which Bursa Malaysia and the PLC Transformation Program Early Adopters can lead the way in promoting a green economy. With this, I would like to invite onto the stage Dato Abdul Rashid Musa, Group Chief Mobility and Innovation Officer and President of Aerospace Division at UMW, Encik Adrin Azli, Vice President of Group Technology and Commercialization at Petronas, Mr. Neil Pabari, Global Head of Corporate Sustainability Solutions at the Data and Analytics Division of the London Stock Exchange Group, Mr. Wong Chin Chek, Director of Bursa Intelligence at Bursa Malaysia, and last but not least, the moderator of this session, Puan Aina Zahari, Director of Corporate Strategy at Bursa Malaysia. As we run through each panelist session, attendees both physically and virtually will be able to participate in the Q&A session. Puan Aina, the session is yours.
Thank you. Very good morning to all. I'm honored this morning to kickstart the first inaugural panel of our inaugural Digital for ESG Forum. So in this session, what we'll be talking about is the centralized sustainability intelligence platform that Dr. Umar mentioned in his welcome remarks earlier today. So the intent of the panel is to first get us all on the same page to say what is this CSI platform that you are hearing about, and two, hopefully with the early adopters that we have on the program, that you'll be able to be inspired to take action in your own respective organizations. So to get us all onto the same page first, let me turn to my colleague who is actually on this panel. We have essentially the architects of the platform, literally, Bursa Malaysia and LSEG. So you'll be hearing from them, and as well as the two early adopters. So CC, of course, as the exchange, we play various roles in the capital market. Please help the audience understand how we came about, crafting this strategy and embarking on this actually very exciting initiative that's leading globally, really. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Aina. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, speakers and panels. So let me touch a little bit upon the why and the how we are doing this. As an exchange, we spend a bit of time deliberating, debating, and discussing why we want to do this, the role that we choose to play vis-a-vis the approach that we choose to undertake in doing so. Obviously, ESG as a mega trend with seismic magnitude provides an opportunity for the nation, for Malaysia, to reclaim some of the leadership position that we have considered across the last decade or so. So where we see Malaysia should play is probably as part of the leadership of a new green world, together with our peer exchanges and peer nations in the global south. And in that regard, how can Bursa as a catalyst for the capital market play in greening the supply chain for the economy? So when we think about how we want to pursue this, I think two things come in mind. The first thing is that the first question we ask ourselves is, how do we act where we do not have complete information? Especially in a field whereby everybody has an opinion, the knowledge gap is big, and people speak in different language. Second, what is the role that we play now in the sense that can deliver business outcome? And you heard my boss, is about profit, is about being a sustainable exchange, meaning sustainable profit for our PLCs, better profiling, better PE ratio, and ultimately, better ESG behavior gets rewarded by virtue of the global supply chain. So that's kind of where we kind of orientate our thinking. So we came up with a plan in terms of how Bursa Malaysia as the exchange can play this role by being the gateway for the for the economy by virtue of the listed companies here through the supply chain to the SMEs. So the first thing we do is that we look at disclosure. We try to create common language. We work with our exchanges, partner exchange in London Stock Exchange to try to use strategic asset we have put in place, such as the FTSE for Good index, to create a transitional asset which will help us to understand what the Western world, what the global north, what the Europeans are talking about when they talk about ESG, what are the standard and framework. So we use that as a transition tool, as well as we announced September last year that we are mandating all PLCs to disclose their ESG performance and the ESG disclosure. So that's step number one. Step number two really is to create the CSR platform, which is create a repository. And we we have asked all the PLC, we will be asking all the PLCs to disclose all their disclosure into this centralized platform. And we aim to also offer this platform, which will contain not only the ESG disclosure, but also early adoption of TCFD and the major standards, as well as carbon calculator that was incorporated in the platform, offered to the PLCs, as well as their non-listed suppliers, as the central repository that can be used to serve multiple stakeholders in the economy. Then what we do at the third stage is where our friends from Petronas, UMWs, the banks comes in. So we start to say, okay, let's drive adoption. Let's get one of the biggest company, the biggest company in Malaysia, Petronas, and let's have a discussion about how do we drive adoption on the platform to drive business value. And on top of that, we will also be working with UMW. So Dato Rashid is the president of aerospace, but at the same time, UMW is also a big automobile manufacturer, and that's a very complex supply chain. So we started with two. We have also invited Maybank CIMB to come on board with us to say, how do we create the carrot for people who embark on the ESG journey? So working together with the corporates and the banks, which are both important constituents to the exchange, to drive adoption, to understand common goals and drive common interests. The fourth thing we do then is to work with London Stock Exchange to reach out to a number of peer exchanges around the region, specifically looking at the ASEAN bloc, as well as some of our peers in the Asia region, Middle East, as well as through London Stock Exchange, the European and the rest of the world, to look at like-minded parties that potentially we can work together to undertake this in the international scale. And lastly, what we do, the Digital for ESG forum here today, which is part of the PLC transformation umbrella, is really to look at how do we create an inclusive ecosystem in Malaysia, whereby it is cost efficient, it is technology driven, in order for us to create critical mass, efficiency, driving adoption for all the PLCs and your suppliers onto the CSR platform in the most cost-efficient manner. Because this speaks directly to the competitiveness of the nation. If we don't have a low-cost structure in the way we disclosure and understand each other, we will not become competitive in the regional landscape. We will be losing out to some of the peer exchange that probably have more access to technology as well as talent. So this not only talk about addressing the cost base, it also talks about skill transfer, and you will see some of our partners from London Stock Exchange from the region here. Feel free to talk to them and feel free to understand what are the technology steps that can help you to reduce your cost as well as improve, future-proof your audit requirements. So long answer, but I hope I can now pass the mic to the rest of my colleagues here.
Sure, thanks. So maybe let's now hear, CC covered about, the vision and how we are rolling out. So maybe I'll just pass the next question to Neil. So from LSG's perspective, of course, you've been in technology solutions in the space and you've been in conversations with global exchanges and companies across different markets around the world. So how do you see this effort that we're doing here and the progress that we've made in Malaysia stand or contrast in the decarbonization efforts? How pioneering are we?
It's a great question, Aina. And as I answer your question, I also want to reference what both Datu Umar and CC have said. Most of the listeners today are probably thinking, oh my God, Bursa is going to put a bunch of obligations on us. It's going to be a headache. It's going to cost more money. Yes, there is a potential for that. But if we take what CC said at face value and try and build an infrastructure that allows us to, through scale and through a national agenda, try to bring down the cost, it creates huge cost reduction is the first thing. The second thing is what's happening here is very coordinated. So you're asking me about how does Malaysia compare to the rest of the world? Very few countries are as coordinated, I think, across the ecosystem of the exchange, the regulators, obviously politicians being involved, but also the companies and the banks, the banking system. And what we have here in the pilot program that Malaysia is driving is an exciting pioneering example that I think could be replicated in many countries. Now, what does this give for Malaysia? And the second sort of part that I want to emphasize is the point that both Dato' Umar and Cici have made. It's about competitive advantage. This is not about a cost burden exercise. And it's really important that the audience understands that, because for the average company, I'm not talking about our friends here on stage, but for the mid caps, smaller caps, and particularly the private sector, this whole ESG disclosure exercise sounds daunting. So the first agenda item that we all collectively share, how can we simplify this? Cost is one thing. How can we reduce the cost? How can we simplify it and bring the companies on that journey alongside us so that the adoption creates a competitive advantage for the companies concerned? And you'll hear examples today from these gentlemen that have much more sophisticated sustainability practices about how their practices are driving particular competitive advantage, and it's leading to business growth. And that's the most compelling and exciting part of this story, because the ESG concept is something that everyone's familiar with and is aware of. But it's, to some extent, not been tapped from the perspective of being a competitive business driver. What we want to emphasize today is there's an opportunity for Malaysia, because this ecosystem is being created, to allow companies of all sizes to decide for themselves whether they want to come into this journey as a competitive benefit, right? So if I'm doing something that is viewed as a sustainable practice that drives advantage for my company, will my customers do more business with me? When that starts to happen, and you'll hear stories today from the gentleman on stage, when that starts to happen, it's adding revenue growth to your business. Who doesn't want revenue growth here, right? For all of you listening, not in the audience, this should be the biggest factor you take away today, that what we're trying to explain is that the opportunity here for Malaysia with this connected ecosystem is the banks are lining up to provide the capital that's going to allow your company to change, to become more competitive. And people like the LSEG Group, the London Stock Exchange, the peer exchanges around the world are here to support Malaysian companies, because I want to promote the best corporates to do more business because they're greening supply chains, right? And if we have European corporates that are becoming much more aggressive about what they want in their supply chain in terms of sustainable practices, then this is a great opportunity for Malaysian companies to come to the fore. This is about whether you want to be competitive or not. That's my opinion. So to answer your question, I apologize. Malaysia is in a uniquely competitive position, I believe, right now, because of this ecosystem that's being built. It's not just the exchange. It's not just the regulator saying disclose. Disclose has to be driving some benefit. Now you've got the leading companies in Malaysia taking a stance, moving forward. You've got the leading banks moving forward. So the ecosystem is becoming very connected, and it provides a phenomenal platform on which the Malaysian corporates can move forward.
Great to hear that, because we do try to get all the gears in motion and working together. So now, talking about walking the talk, so I was looking at the panelists. I was reading some articles last month. UMW, I want to congratulate Dato' Rashid. Last month, UMW Aerospace secured a 15-year contract from Rolls-Royce for 1 billion ringgit. That's exciting. And, from reading the article, it sounded like part of it is attributed to your ESG adoption. So could you share a little bit of that journey and why you think ESG gave it a competitive edge?
Thank you, Anna. I think not many people are aware that BMW is in aerospace industry. We are more known for automotive mobility. BMW embarked into aerospace industry in 2015 with the signing of agreement with Rolls-Royce to supply the fan case as a tier 1 company. The fan case we're making is for the Trent 1000, Trent 7000 engine that been used for Boeing 787 Dreamliner and also A330neo, big planes. And we're quite fortunate that amongst the ecosystem or the suppliers, we're quite new in the game. So we just started 2015 and we rolled out our first production in 2017. And quite interesting journey. Mass production started in 2018. In 2021, we have been inducted into a Rolls-Royce high-performing supplier group. That is the top 5% globally, of the suppliers of Rolls-Royce. They evaluated us amongst 4 categories or criteria. Number 1 is about quality, second cost, third delivery, and fourth is management. And that covers ESG. And in 2022, last year, again, we've been awarded another award called Best Practice Supplier Award, globally amongst 705 Rolls-Royce global supplier in UK. Not only for BMW, I believe for Malaysia as an attractive location for the aerospace industry. And this is in line with the government aspiration under the National Aerospace Blueprint 2030 to make Malaysia the number 1 hub in ASEAN. And sharing, I'm not the expert in ESG, CC knows that, but I'm sharing that the one of the key parameters that actually put us as the best practice supplier and also for us to get the award, because they will give the new contracts to those in the top 5% of their so-called suppliers. And they've evaluated us, and we're quite fortunate also that, Malaysia is having this program, and we are located at BMW HVM Park, High Value Manufacturing Park, which is the first in Selangor State industrial green rated industrial park. So it's not only the factory is green, even the industrial park is also green. So when they evaluated us, so I believe that has actually landed us with a new contract. So this is the second contract for us to produce the rear fan case for Rolls-Royce. That's a short journey.
Yeah, kudos indeed. Now let me now turn to our other early adopter of the CSI platform program, Petronas, of course. Adrian, of course, Petronas is a giant and a leader in innovation as well as ESG. Could you share with us, being at that scale, what is the reach of Petronas and why have you really, been a pioneer and come on board to this program?
Thank you, Aina. I think for Petronas, we about 3 or 4 years ago, where we've actually kind of declared our intent of our vision to be a net zero target by 2050. We've kind of put in place, and to use a digital jargon, we've kind of pivoted the whole company towards this goal, right? And this is all in terms of our efforts, our strategies, and how do we see ourselves. I think traditionally Petronas, we see ourselves as a oil and gas player, but we've kind of pivoted that as well towards really trying to be at the forefront of an energy supplier and a solutions provider as well. And I think in this accord, we've kind of put in measures where, for example, is that we have put in what we call a net zero pathway, which is a systematic year by year, OPU, machine by machine, what we need to abate or what we need to reduce in order for us to kind of reach that target. So when this opportunity came up, we thought that there is a dual role or dual intent to it. One, of course, is we want to play that leading role within that energy pillar in Malaysia and within our industry to almost kind of lead the way, not just for us and our group of companies, but also our ecosystem. The suppliers that's together with us, our key partners, that's probably about 4 to 5,000 ish. And these are kind of those that's directly registered with Petronas. Of course, these will also have their own subcontractors and so on and so forth, right? So I think one of the first pillars is that how can Petronas play that catalytic role? Because, when we talk about sustainability, it's just not the scope 1, it's scope 2, scope 3 as well. So the more we feel, the more we can bring that ecosystem along, it is also beneficial to us. The second point, I guess, the second motivation behind this is we all, like I said, we also see ourselves as a clean energy solution provider. And the bigger the ecosystem is moving towards this space, we also feel that this is an opportunity for us to perhaps work together with our partners to commercialize some of our solutions through our sister company, Gentari, as well. We're looking at a green first company, and that Gentari is providing energy solutions like solar, hydrogen. So this is also an opportunity in that ecosystem as we open up and we see bigger opportunities where Petronas can play that dual role, both as a catalyst for the pillar of energy, but also maybe as an energy supplier or a solution provider as well.
Perhaps on that note, I'll pose this question to both Adrian and also Dr. Rashid. So, you have the plan is to roll this out and have it adopted by more and more companies in your supply chain. How does this fit into your company's, green programs and education? And also, so how can you talk us through a little bit about how will that be done?
Their own net zero aspiration to achieve by 2050. They are rolling it in 3 different phases. First, about their own facility, to achieve net zero by 2030 for their own facilities, for scope 1. Closely with hello. And we are actively participating with our customers. And also we need to make sure that our own ecosystem are also abiding to it. So it's a journey, a win-win for all of us actually in the ecosystem. The more the merrier. I think what we have done at EMW, we have also rolled out our net zero program. And we have also communicated with our suppliers and also dealers to roll this out. And we have formed a board committee at company level and to monitor and provide guidance for us in this area. So we had embarked actually in many areas. In fact, not only about solar, also rainwater harvesting, but we came up with our own R&D setup called EMW Innovation and R&D Center in Serendah, Selangor, that focus on green innovations only. So we have came up with 3 actually products that's available in the market to support industries to achieve their scope 1 for them and also our scope 3. So one of them is actually battery revival system that can help to extend the shelf life of battery. So that battery, you have battery for cars, for forklift, for even solar panels, you have battery as well, expensive battery. We can extend the life up to another 2 cycles. So extending the life will reduce the so-called waste. Secondly, we are also in lubricant business. We work with universities, local universities, to come out with a new solution called biolubricant. So hydraulic that is made from palm oil base. And the best part is that it's cheaper than conventional lubricants. So it's not only you get to be green, and it can reduce your cost as well. So similarly for the first one, you can extend the life. Instead of buying new battery, you can use the old battery and extend the life. And thirdly, we are also working with another university to come out with a solution for water filtration. We produce our own membrane to filter water. Soon, I believe the government will impose, you are not only paying for the new water that you consume, but also for the water that you discharge. So they call it, I think, if I'm mistaken, they call it zero discharge policy. So it got to be billed soon for that. So we came up with an industry solution to filter the water so you can reduce your water bill for the new water and also avoid penalties when these to be introduced later. So that's how we work. So we are not only providing solution for ourselves, but also for the ecosystem. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. I guess it's almost a similar journey for Petronas. When we think about digital and technology for Petronas in the context of sustainability, we kind of think of it as an input and output model. Output model means how can, in us creating energy, how can we reduce emissions? So this is where things like digitalization, of course, as we get more efficient, where we use, for example, AI. By AI, we can ensure that the maintenance is more efficient. Where we operate our plants, we don't use as much energy. One of the analytics program we have called Aries, the same plant based on digital analytics, we can increase the yield of that plant by about 5 to 10%. And when you look at that times by, I guess, the price of reduce emissions, but at the same time, still meet your goals, right? It's testing voice modulation. Practice here. So I think that's from the output model, right? How can we kind of, in the most simplistic way, how can we get using technology and digital to be more optimized? And because of that, inadvertently, we use less energy. And because of that, we reduce emissions, right? On the input model, then the thinking is, how can we create different, more sustainable means in order to create that energy, right? So this is where, through our R&D and our collaboration with UMW, different sources of energy, hydrogen, solar, renewables, but also looking at things like bio-based fuels, membrane technology in creating the fuels. So this is where we are looking at technology and digital on the input side to create that same kind of dollar of energy. Now, the third kind of, block of this is we're introducing energy in as part of a culture and a mindset as well. So one of the things that I'm quite proud of, we're working with our young professional leaders club, and through digital, we're creating a platform called Personal Sustainability Index. And again, the idea is that working with these kind of young leaders, we create a platform where each of the Petronas staff can kind of measure their own carbon index, right? You put how far you are from your house, and you actually kind of what transporter do you use, what's your lifestyle choice, and you kind of create a carbon meter on your own. And I think overarching this kind of culture, input and output, is of course the measurement, right? And I think this is where digital really becomes powerful. Right? The ability to track, the ability to measure, the ability to disclose. And we're trying to do that, of course, at Petronas level. But it becomes a lot more powerful when that platform is spread across, right? And that is across industries, and if it across multi-industries, multi-vendors, multi-subcontractors. And I think this is why we came in as an early adopter, because we really believe that this is the only way to go if we really want to harness that competitiveness, right? Digital is not cheap, friends. I don't claim it to be. So you must kind of build one used by many. And in this case, for example, we don't want to build it from scratch. If we can learn from what LSEG has done, and we can put in that ecosystem, we have banks to come in to do the financing, and that ultimately becomes inadvertently a lot more powerful platform than if Petronas was to do it ourselves. So I think that's kind of the logic behind what we're thinking coming into this. Thanks, Aina.
Yeah. And that's really the key crux of, what will make this platform work is that it's centralized. That's actually a key. Centralized and sustainability intelligence, they're all equal weightage in this design. Either one of the panelists can take this question, but I guess, if you can describe how you see having this centrality and standardization of ESG data, how either as corporates it will help you assess your companies, and how it will unlock financing. Either one.
Let me try and have a go at that. I'm really inspired with some of the comments that the gentlemen have made around the innovations that their companies are driving. And hopefully you all take away, those are innovations that create competitive advantage for UMW and Petronas going forward in the future. The Rolls-Royce example that Dr. Rashid talks about is an outstanding example of showing you how a Western company is making decisions on its own procurement activity, and a Malaysian company is stepping in as the top supplier in that example, right? So this is a really tangible example of competitive advantage. From the perspective of how centralization of the data source itself benefits Malaysian companies, but equally will benefit the supply chain, the answer is quite simple. In the Rolls-Royce example, you have a Western company who now has, going forward, the opportunity to look at all of Malaysia's companies as this platform gets rolled out and be able to compare company A and company B. And when the procurement department, because the problem isn't the sustainability statements these companies make, the problem is at the procurement level. A company like Rolls-Royce probably has tens of thousands of suppliers. Now, some poor person sitting in procurement has to conform to whoever the sustainability officer's directive is, make my supply chain greener. That's a problem today. Because today, the procurement department says, well, I'll send out a questionnaire. Who wants to fill in that questionnaire? Nobody. Because I'm sure UMW gets the questionnaire from all of your customers, right? And so your poor people now have to go through all these questionnaires if they want to be relevant. What more likely happens is your people say, here's the link to my sustainability website. Please have a go. Now the person at Rolls-Royce is saying, well, I don't know how to compare your information to somebody else's. And this is the value of the centralized platform. Because when Malaysia implements this, all of Malaysia's corporate data now becomes readable for an international customer. That creates huge value to all of the corporates here, particularly if you're doing stuff like we've heard from both Petronas and UMW today. So you've got potential of a Rolls-Royce procurement officer saying, I can understand the data that UMW is providing, therefore I can make decisions to allocate business there. That becomes the competitive driver for each corporate, but collectively for the nation. And then from a London Stock Exchange point of view, and clearly, from the point that Cici was making earlier, as we connect more and more communities, more and more exchanges around the world, what now starts to happen is Malaysian companies can look at their suppliers who may be in the region or international, and also start enabling those same decisions within your own procurement departments. Because the problem is circular, right? So when UMW starts acquiring steel for doing the turbine casings or whatever you're purchasing, the hydraulic coils that you build and the water membrane stuff, in order to improve your own assessments of the suppliers that you're selecting, the data, the more standardized that data is, the more valuable it is in your own decision making. I'll finish off. What then that leads to is a huge benefit for the banks, right? Because the key thing here is in order to transition the businesses and create new products and services, often it's the financing that's the challenge. Now, if we're providing the standardized form of data to the banks, they can now compare and contrast. It's a bit like credit underwriting, right? How do they lend money to a company? They base today a lot of the decision on the way they assess credit. Now, the reality is green scoring, in whatever form you want to call it, is becoming a more important factor in how the financial community start dispersing financing. As Bursa Malaysia is now looking at launching a standardized data set for this, it creates a huge cost benefit for the banks as well. And so I think there's a tremendous value we're unlocking here, which drives down cost. It will unlock the financing. And in the panel later this morning, you'll hear from the banks their view on, obviously, this initiative. Cici.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. So it's a shinier toy, so I think it works better.
Things are serious when they bring out the platinum mics.
Yeah, so I think Neil, you have given a perfect answer to describe the centralized, right? So I think there's a single source of truth, a platform that can be served by multiple stakeholders in the ecosystem. I think that's perfect, and not only in Malaysia. Hopefully, it's connected to the rest of the community internationally. So I do think that at this juncture, probably we describe a little bit of what we mean by the CSI platform. To be honest, it's not a name that we consciously designed it. Huyin is laughing, but we struggle around centralized reporting, centralized platform. How do we call it? So we eventually landed with CSI, which I think is a pretty good. Is investigation, intelligence. It sounds a little bit better, but so I think Neil explained the centralized piece. I think from a sustainability piece is it's where we think from Malaysia's standpoint where we want to play this role. I talked about how do we want to do it? What is the approach we take? But I think the short answer is really leadership, right? The question is, do we follow and wait for all the standards are being set, and then we act? We can either join the discussion about how do we improve and how do we look at the Malaysia standard and provide the most complete taxonomy for us to act. And that's a really healthy and really fruitful discourse. Or do we do something that, and with trial and error probably, but working with like-minded organizations to say, let's try to see what we can pilot. Let's try to see what we can build and progress from there. And from a sustainability standpoint, is that if Malaysia want to do this, it's not only sustainability, not only sustainable from a green standpoint, but it's also a sustainable ecosystem. So that's where we want to look at how do we embed sustainability, both from a green standpoint as well as business practices, sustainable profit, sustainable ecosystem that is inclusive and is vibrant, innovative, and competitive. And the intelligence piece, where we think about intelligence, is really thinking about. I think what comes to mind is one of my colleague. I don't take credit for this phrase, but Luann from CMB in one of the ICDM forums, she mentioned that ESG now no longer is the game now is no longer play to win. It is the right to play. Now, as I think about it, it's a bit profound in the sense that when we talk about it's no longer play to win, but right to play. Right to play actually carries two meaning. The first one is that if you don't adopt ESG, you risk being disintermediated. You risk losing your business to your peer suppliers who is more serious in this journey. So you taking a step back, you might lose your competitiveness. Alternatively, if you look at the other side, the right to play means that for new entrants, for example, it suddenly gives you a new market to play. Suddenly becomes a new competitiveness that you gain. The example that Dr. Rashid talked about and Neil talked about, right? The lubricant, is both cheaper and more sustainable, and now there is access to market that LSEC through the platform can now bring to the rest of the world. Now, that brings me to the last bit, which is the platform piece. At the end of the day, the exchange is a marketplace. We do not manufacture a product. We facilitate conversation. We facilitate coordination. We bring people together with an outcome that can benefit everybody. So from a platform standpoint, both from a data, single source of truth, analytics being embedded, intelligence of the data, as well from a platform, from a marketplace standpoint. So in this case, if, for example, the product that UMW or China says, right, UMW has a product that could now be exported to the rest of the world, that's a platform as a marketplace. Now, Petronas, is you're looking at building a digital business around how do we enable the ecosystem by having more digital services or digital products. I think that's another platform whereby it creates new revenue stream for Petronas. So I think that's kind of where the CSI platform probably comes in play.
Let me pause right here and see if there are any questions from the floor. We do have just raise your hand if you have a question for the panelists, and the mic will be brought to you. Don't be shy. Anyone, or other questions from online on Zoom? There are. Okay, so none from the physical, so we'll go to online. Question is, how would the requirements of the centralized ESG repository platform be different from that of the sustainability report? Maybe CC wants to take that.
Yes, I'm the... Okay, how would the requirements of the centralized ESG repository? So, Bursa has mandated all listed companies to disclose ESG practices starting December 2023, meaning end of this year. So if your company have a year-end December this year, you will need to disclose your ESG starting probably in March, April next year. And if you look at the disclosure requirements, there are 23, there are 11 themes, and there are 23 different common data sets across industry. So that's number one. The transition period will span across 2 years. Most of the requirements will start this year. Some will start the year after. Now, the second stream of the reporting requirements is the TCFD requirements. I think the central bank has asked the bank to look at incorporating TCFD into their disclosure 2024. From Bursa standpoint, the mandatory disclosure for TCFD starts in 2025. Now, what we have enabled the platform to do, and we will ask all the PLCs to disclose your ESG disclosure into this platform, is that we want to make it as seamless as possible to the PLCs. So if you're PLCs today, when you disclose your financial reporting or your company announcement, you do it through a system called Bursa Link. So the idea here is that we maintain the same user experience as much as possible. Hi, Mario. To all the PLCs. Start with your financial reporting. We embed a new module to enable you to disclose your ESG disclosure as well. So all the mandatory disclosure I talked about. Inside the disclosure also include recommendation on best practices by sector across the different industry. So you can choose to disclose what you want based on the sector you want, based on the sector you are in, into the same system. And we also include the TCFD. Even though the requirements for Bursa is 2025, but we embed the TCFD module for you to play around and to get familiarized with starting the end of this year. Now, the other piece that we incorporated into the disclosure platform is the carbon disclosure, a carbon calculator piece, which is a module that I think we will talk about in the next panel. But the carbon calculator would be able to allow you to disclose your emission footprint, as well as allow your suppliers to disclose their emission footprint and have the ability to provide you a view of your supplier's carbon footprint estimation for you to design a supply chain program with. Now, if we talk about the reporting requirements, those are what it is in the platform. The sustainable reporting, the sustainable report today, what Bursa has asked for is that you will need to also include, you will need to disclose the ESG data sets, the 23 data sets into the platform. Also include them into the sustainable report that you will be submitting to Bursa. So there will be two different documents. Well, there will be one document which is your sustainable reporting that you will be submitting to Bursa. There will also be a module on the platform that is integrated to Bursa Link, whereby you will need to input the ESG data disclosure that is mandated by the regulator as part of the listing requirements.
Thank you. There's another question from Zoom. With more use of AI to go in line with ESG, in the long term, would you say that there is less manpower required? Would that alter the rate of employability in the industry? Perhaps one of the giant employers would like to take step.
Oh, that's kind of a hypothetical, conceptual question. So, we think of AI not just like artificial intelligence. I'm using this phrase because I borrowed it, but it's more of augmented intelligence. And the idea is actually how can we kind of do the more mundane, the more rigorous, the kind of things that humans are not designed to actually do. Monotonous, kind of uber discipline work, and trying to use that. And I think this is important because the data points we have to measure is getting exponentially higher. The rate of change in the industry is getting faster. So you got to make faster decisions, be able to look at different risks a lot better now, and be able to do interoperability of data and trustability. And I think this is where AI can really come in. But I don't really think it's replacing. It's probably helping humans do other work, but it may also create new jobs, right? To make it very simple, I guess, I don't know, many years ago when steam engines comes and that technology was new, I'm sure it was also question, will steam engine replace human being, replace work? The short answer, yes, it did. It did, right? But does it mean that industries collapse and people are just sitting at home watching TV? It didn't, because new jobs gets created, and I guess the human will prevail. Right? And I think that's the same kind of journey that we're taking on AI. But hopefully, by doing this as well, AI will be able to make that work cleaner as well, right? And create new energy sources that's more sustainable. And I think that's the hope that I have personally as well.
On my view is that these are just tools for us to be more efficient and effective. So I take it that way that, we know that we are now not at level of IR 4.0. Actually, if you read, they're already IR 5.0, which is more human-centric, cognitive features, collaborative with robots, and also customized solution. So these are tools to make humankind more efficient in use of resources, right? So of course there will be changes in requirements or skill set required for us to embark in the future. So I believe we have to take it that way. These are tools for us to be more efficient and effective to solve our global problem.
Question? Oh, there's a question from the floor.
Good morning, Datuk and seniors. Hi, Aina. My name is Chin from Berjaya. A few of our PLCs already started our journey on sustainable reporting. So I'm particularly keen about the centralization of data, the digital platform that's going to be implemented. So we have the Bursa Toolkit Enhanced Reporting Guide, the reporting guide and the toolkit itself. So with the 23 indicators, it will be in the digital platform, right? I just need a confirmation. What about FTSE indicators? Are the participants or future players obliged to key in these data and be part of a centralized platform? And is there a carrot, like you mentioned, for the suppliers in the supply chain to perform as well?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think before I answer, I think in the third panel today, or in the fireside chat, which is the third session of the event today, Helena from LSET FTSE would be probably more qualified to answer that question from a FTSE for good standpoint. But I think the short answer is that the mandatory disclosure would be the 23 data matrices. But from a FTSE standpoint, a lot of the key data points in FTSE Russell will be made available inside the platform as a best practice or recommendation to the PLCs. So you can choose to disclose it voluntarily if you want to on the platform. Now, the reason we use FTSE and the FTSE, so we launched the FTSE for Good Index since 2014. So we have 8-9 years of data sets, and we have out of the 1,000 companies listed on Bursa, we have probably 300 to 400 companies whereby we have pretty comprehensive lists of ESG data sets for each company. And FTSE for Good does serve a very strong purpose transition vehicle for us to make reference to when we come up with the listing requirement framework for ESG disclosure. So it's not mandatory from a FTSE for Good standpoint. It's up to the company who wants to improve their FTSE for Good ESG rating to look at the framework and see how do they improve it and improve your FTSE for Good rating. But the ESG disclosure will be focused around the mandated 23 data points that for the companies that require.
Perhaps just one more question online. Looks, I see some excitement. Sounds like a question CEO would ask you. How soon will the carbon calculator be ready?
It's ready now. The answer is, as we've been working on building a scalable infrastructure, there's been a lot of thought around using a platform, particularly around carbon emission calculations, that can be scaled to thousands of companies. Many people that are doing this type of work today will be witness to very different methodologies, different processes, different technologies in how this is being done. And you reach a point actually where As you build on the precision, you're actually increasing cost exponentially, because the reality of all of the carbon measurement methodologies today is they're all estimate models. Because, London Stock Exchange, we're very sophisticated in how we do stuff, but I don't have a measuring device on my nose measuring how much carbon dioxide I'm breathing out. So it gives you a real tangible sense that what tools and technologies are being deployed through this platform, they'll evolve. We're at a good starting point, and we have something that's very highly, in my opinion, scalable and robust with a very sound methodology. One of the gentlemen on the panel coming up after this conversation is one of the founders of the platform that we're using to support that. He'll take you through a lot of the detail, but the answer to the question, we're ready to go.
I lied. There's another question that just came in. Would the CSR platform be aligning to the GRI reporting framework and ISSB disclosure?
The short answer is yes. The CSI platform would be aligned to GRI reporting principles. Again, back to FTSE for Good, it is a framework and methodology that's aligned to GRI, TCFD, and a major framework. ISSB, as some of you might know, will come. Well, the announcement will come in June, and the feature of the platform is that as and when new standards come in that might be relevant to the Malaysia market, we will make the necessary review, public consultation, and then we will make necessary changes in our listing requirements. And all these changes that could be aligned to future changes of standards and framework will also be reflected in the CSR platform. Now, I do want to probably end by saying in the third session today, there would be the third session is a fireside chat. Whereby what the intention is to let the audience know, let all the PLCs and listed companies know what are the standards that we look at as a regulator from a Bursa standpoint in terms of what are the ones that are required for the Malaysia capital market. Now, we realize there are many different standards and requirements out there. Some of them are required by your suppliers or your customers, but what we thought might be valuable is to just net it down into the few that are relevant to the Malaysia market, and we have the expert on each of the subject topics on the third session today. So do stay until then and probably get a bit more clarity around what are the basically bare minimum that you should be looking at.
Aina, let me just supplement Cece's answer. To start with, the focus is the Bursa requirements, which are obviously mandated by the regulatory obligations. The second is TCFD. We could bring in a lot more to start with. Let's start somewhere and build from there would be the answer. And we understand that many corporates have other reporting obligations. The intention is to try and meet as many as we can. But if we confuse the market, and you think about this, trying to do this on a market-wide basis, if you confuse the market, nobody starts. So let's start simple. Let's start with what makes sense for Malaysia and build from there.
I need to wrap up soon for this session. It's been very interesting. My last main message, is we're Bursa, so we do. It's the quality of the companies and the corporate earnings that we want to get up, which is a tenet of the PLC transformation program that my team is driving. So in Malaysia, about 70% of our exports are already going to countries that have made net zero commitments. So I urge all the corporate leaders in all your capacity to help. Bring forward, on the ESG. So on that note, I'd like to just maybe give 30 seconds each to just our Adrian and Datuk Rashid. Any last messages to companies big and small on this topic?
I think it's a journey. I think why we're on this journey for Petronas is, again, trying to simplify that reporting complexity, try to be on the front foot when it comes to perhaps setting some of these standards within the industry and within Malaysia, and look at potential areas of collaboration and where we can share some of those innovations, right? So I think, again, we don't believe that we will have all the answers. As we try to look at these data sets, trustability will be an issue. There will probably be tweaks and all that. And that's why we kind of going on an MVP or a pilot and taking it step by step. So I think for us, and just sharing our philosophy on this, it is not the silver bullet, but it's a good start. And being in this journey is better than waiting and seeing. Right? Thank you.
And I think for my view is that Malaysia has the opportunity to create new niche capability for the country because the business environment is changing and we have that head start, led by Bursa for us to make Malaysia great again. And let's take this opportunity. I think amongst other ASEAN countries, probably they are bigger, more difficult for them to roll out green infrastructure. It's easier for us with 30 million populations compared to Indonesia, 300 and thousands of islands. So let's create this as a new niche, competitive position for the country, for Malaysia, for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Truly, thank you.